Now we were ready to smash at Japan's front door, the Marianas Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam. D-Day, the battle for the Marianas. The LSTs unload their Amtraks. We attack again. A joint assault force of Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. Saipan. Nothing can stop the Amtraks except a direct hit. Driving in. One of our planes is hit. Jap fire pins us down. Start across the beach. The Jap throws everything he has at us. Many of us are hit. Even the wounded carry on. We secure our first foothold in the Marianas. Another D-Day. To the south, another joint assault force smashes at Guam. Coast Guard gets us through heavy enemy fire. Guam is American ground. The first piece of territory the Jap took from us. We're taking it back.
At home, cheerful appeals to save waste and buy war bonds are a success.
Buy a bond, and by, the bonds you buy'll bring you victory.
10-year-old Joan Dooley from Wichita, Kansas, writes to General MacArthur, the Army chief in the Pacific.
I suppose you would like to know what we at home are doing. My mother saves grease for bullets. I also buy a war stamp every time I get a quarter. We save paper and all kinds of metal. I have a bicycle, but I don't very often ride it to save rubber tires.
This is no time to say you've done enough. This is the time to really do your stuff. And even if you can't be a soldier in the ranks, you can be the guy to help supply the guns and planes and tanks. This is the time for you to do your best.
More than half the population invests in war bonds.
The enemy is reeling and his morale is low. So now's the time to fall in line and deal the final blow. Bye, bye, bye.
Victories in Guadalcanal and neighboring islands prove that the Americans can defeat the Japanese, but with heavy casualties.
Primarily, I walked behind the beach master, and he would tell me things, and I would radio. And then we had our radio set at the command post, CP, and we'd run messages out of there back to the ship. When I was on the ship, I was a CW operator, that's CW, and we'd had to sit there and type messages and so forth.
Guam is now Japanese, but the sun has set for the Chamorros, and during the long night ahead, Guam is forced to muster with Saipan and Tinian, and the three islands form a cluster of death traps across the path leading north to Japan, west to the Philippines. With every passing month of occupation, the Japanese impose increasingly harsh restrictions on Guam and its people, using every device of pressure and propaganda to integrate forever the island into their empire. For 2.5 years, Guam waits, secured and beyond reach within the Japanese wall of water and steel. But in June 1944, incredibly, miraculously, powerful United States naval forces appear off the Marianas as the Allies, on the other side of the world, storm ashore at Normandy. The ebb tide has given way to the flow. Now it is the Americans who bear down on Guam in overwhelming strength. Now it is the Japanese who are doomed.
I got detached off my ship. This friend of mine, Ed Beal, and I, well, there's more than this, but we were assigned to alligators, or to lead the waves into Guam.
Under Admiral Spruance, ships of the United States Fifth Fleet have brought 100,000 troops and 250,000 sailors to the Marianas.
And he got the first wave and I got the second wave. For some reason or other, I just got a letter from him. He reminded me that we traded. I have no idea why I would trade for the first wave, but I did. And they would fire their rockets, and then they would go out, and then another one would come in and fire. And they had a little routine, and they would bombard with those rockets. Well, we had rockets on that little boat that I rode in. The little first wave, we had machine guns and armor and rockets on the back of that. And I was more afraid of the Marines behind me shooting me than I was the Japanese in front of me. I was the lead boat, first wave. We had to keep the troops and the supplies moving inland. And that was our job, is to keep the beaches moving. And our beach was all over on the left flank. We were under heavy fire, which we were mortar and artillery. That's the first time we ran across artillery fire. But I went back to the ship, and my beach party, with my regular bunch, landed there, but they weren't operational. We couldn't hear them. No batteries, no batteries. The batteries were dead, so I loaded up some batteries. And the second day, I went in, and everybody was holed up. They had built a fort, really sandbags and everything else, and they were getting some, well, not too much artillery then, but some mortars, and the Marines were, Guam goes up.
On Guam, the assault troops inch forward against suicidal Japanese resistance. Against the Americans, the Japanese have pitted units of their crack Manchurian army.
On the beach there, they would throw mortars. We just landed people. We weren't where the Marines fighting anybody. We landed, and when they'd shoot at us, we'd go hide out, and we'd duck in our holes, and the mortar, we could hear the artillery coming in. But that's the first time we ran across. First time we ran across shrapnel too. It landed so close. I grabbed. We had sandbags all around us, and took a piece of that, and it was just red hot. You know, it comes in chunks. We had trouble getting stuff in. They get stuck, and we had it went up, and then I remember they had a tank. I remember the elephant on the tank. The Marines run a tank up by us. They couldn't go up in the hills. It was jungle and hills. It lit everything up at night, you know. They had starbursts and stuff like that.
17,000 Japanese fall in the battle for Guam. Last-ditch defenders are blasted from caves.
They would bombard it with phosphorus. The cannons would shoot phosphorus, and you could see it coming down. And you know what phosphorus does? It burns you. And the guys who were in the foxholes and stuff, the Japanese, would be burnt. They would fire great big phosphorus shells. And I've seen like the Marines use these flamethrowers. They burned them out of those places. I remember, like I say, when I first hit Guam, the Marines were off to the right. They were moving up a hill, and they were using those flamethrowers on pillboxes and stuff like that. Yeah, I think it became more business. I'm in war or something like that. It became more professional, if anything. It became more not scary, but more of a job. And I took pride in knowing to bring the batteries in, and a little bit critical of this guy not doing, like they were hiding out in their thing when he should be out on the ta-ta-ta, you know. And because I had been trained under Mr. Bryant, the Beachmaster.
The nightmare of battle has ended. Peace has come again to Guam, to the Marianas, and arising from the ashes, new life. They knew the Americans would come back one day. The Americans have come. Destruction gives way to construction, as fruits of American industry and the know-how of her men transform tropical Guam into a generator for victory in the Pacific. Guam becomes the Pacific supermarket, where the tools of war are stocked. From Guam, Admiral Nimitz directs the naval strategy for the final phase of war in the Far East. Pearl Harbor, the traditional headquarters of the United States Pacific Fleet, is now a remote rear area. But Nimitz's new base is equidistant from two major Allied objectives. Tokyo, 1,600 miles north. Manila, 1,500 miles west. Everything needed to conquer the one and liberate the other has been furnished in abundance, and overabundance, and superabundance by workers and factories 10,000 miles back across the vast reaches of the Pacific in continental United States. But here it all is. Detroit is here, and Birmingham is here. Pittsburgh is here, and so is Seattle. The wealth of American skill and American labor is stored and stacked and ready here on Guam.